is it possible for students to self-fund their studies at McGill and apply for scholarships later on? What do you think?
Self-funding. Now, we've had a number of students, they haven't been from Iran, but they've been from some, what I would call rich oil countries, like Saudi Arabia. And they sometimes come with their own scholarship. And it's very tempting for a professor to accept because it won't cost the professor any research funds.
Yeah. Hi, Larry. How are you?
Hello.
Hello. So glad to have you here.
Connecting, but I'm here now.
I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome to our page, and we're so glad to have such distinguished professor with us. I'm so happy to know you. I'm Rana from the ابرادین team, and yeah, welcome. Please give us an introduction if you want to, and we're just so glad. We're just honored to have you here.
Okay, well, let me start by saying you should stop saying you're honored. I'm just a regular person like everyone else, so I'm not, I'm just happen to be a professor at McGill University. So my background is, my bachelor's degree is from the same university, McGill, and then I did my master's and PhD at Stanford University in the United States a long time ago. So now I've been back at McGill University as a professor for 34 years now. So I'm one of the senior professors in my department. My research area is in mechanical engineering and composite materials, so materials, and I specialize in sustainability and recycling of these materials. So I just did a 1 year round the world bike trip on my sabbatical year. Unfortunately, I was unable to get a visa to go to Iran. So I think they didn't like the fact that I was going to be filming. So they wouldn't give me a visa to go into Iran, despite the fact that I had invitations from 4 of your top universities to go give presentations. But that will have to be for another time.
And I'm so sad to hear that you cannot visit our country at the moment, because I was looking forward to ask you this question, like whether you would like to, you know, ride your bike here and save the planet, because I actually checked your Instagram account and that was so interesting. Please give us an explanation about your project, because people here might not know about it, and to me it was really interesting. Like, how did you how do you stay motivated, and what made you think of biking as a way to save the planet?
Well, I think a lot of students, young students, they're so worried about getting jobs that I think they just want to get any job, and sometimes it leads them to be maybe a little bit misguided. So, like, I don't want students working for the military. I don't want students doing things that are going to hurt the planet. So I thought I would go around the world to different universities and encourage students to get to work in at least research and jobs in sustainability, renewable energy, and these kind of things. Because in the future, there's not only will there be a lot of jobs, but we're going to need the brightest of our students to work in this area and not work, let's say, for the military or some other kind of wasting, you know, the bright young minds. So, and one of the reasons I did this, not only do I like traveling and I like bicycling, but it's a very difficult journey. So I wanted to show by example that I can do something really difficult. And then if I can, at my age, do a difficult journey like this, then, you know, people can do their part for saving the planet and the environment. So kind of by example, I do something difficult, it shows that you can do anything.
Absolutely.
And students can do anything. So
I totally agree, and I'm so happy you started such journey, because as someone who's anti-war and you know the conditions that we live here with, so I'm just so happy to see someone like having a way to show their mindset and their opinions in such peaceful way. So like, so proud.
yeah. So I got very close. I was in Turkey, and I was on my way to Iran, but still waiting for that visa. And I would have given talks at Isfahan, Amir Kabir, Sharif, and IUST in Tehran. And but it didn't happen. No visa. So it'll have to be for next time, when maybe the political situation is a little more calm in your country.
Absolutely. So, I'm just so sad. That's so unfortunate that you weren't able to visit the country and give speeches in these universities. But at the moment, I'm just so happy and excited to have you here and to host you on our Instagram page. And I guess all of our guests, all of our users who are watching would say the same thing. So hopefully in near future, we would be hosting you here in Iran. And yeah, maybe going to Isfahan, biking to Isfahan, actually. That would be so interesting, I guess. So
I would want lots of students to join me on their bicycles as I cross through Iran. So just so I don't get lost in the desert. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, like, as an Iranian, I can also get lost in the desert. So that's actually a wise choice. I agree with you. So some of our users asked some questions. So if you agree, we can start with the questions, and in the meantime, we can also talk about your project and your plans for future, the future countries you're planning to visit and bike around. What do you think? Do you think that's a good plan?
Well, I think we should use this time not for my publicity, but to help your users, so they can ask questions, about universities, especially Canadian universities, especially McGill University.
Absolutely.
And also, if you're interested in my project about cycling and recycling, we can certainly ask questions about that too. Or whatever is on your mind, that you feel would, a question that you think would help a lot of other students at the same time.
Absolutely.
So in my point of view, there are no bad questions. So
I'm happy to hear that. I'm more relaxed now. Honestly, I was so stressed because this is our first English live session, yeah. So I had some stressful moments before this live, but you're such a cool person. I'm happy to be having this live session with you. So without further ado, let's start with the questions that our users ask, and then we can get to the questions they are asking now on our live session. One of the most asked ones was that, based on the stories and posts we've shared, many might already know you, but could you please, you introduced yourself. I actually asked this, so let me see. Okay, yeah, they asked that. They were concerned, they were interested, to know which Iranian universities you know of, and which ones you would be glad to have students from, participating in your projects or recruiting them for different programs.
So this is always difficult, because I realize that there are good applicants from many universities in Iran, but I get so many, so I really end up filtering, and I only look at applicants from 4 universities, basically. So, so if you're not from Tehran, Sharif, Amir Kabir, or IUST, but working for my former student, Professor Shokriye, then I probably won't look at the application, unfortunately, just because I get literally 5 to 10 requests per day from Iranian students, and that's not counting students from other countries. So, you know, when you're flooded with so many, then I just can't consider them all. So that's the unfortunate part of it. So
yeah, absolutely, I totally agree. The thing is that I guess with so many good applicants, as you said, the standards will change to, like, you know, one would want to admit the best ones and like help the brightest minds out there. So it would be, I totally understand like where you're coming from with that. So that was our first question. Let's go to the second one. This is more about the application process. I have the questions ready here, so if I look away, that's why. Let me ask you about your perspective as a professor. Do you recommend students to email professors when applying for master's or PhD programs? Like, does this whole like emailing thing apply to both levels, or would you say it works better for one of them, like for PhD or for master's?
Well, I mean, if I get an applicant that should be working for me, then it's always good if I get an email from them. However, I get students that, I don't know, they say that, like, I work in composite materials and recycling. So a student, you know, has done a master's degree in a completely different field and says they want to work in my area. Well, by working in a different field as a master's, you've proven that you're not interested in my area. So then I just, you know, I can't really believe the student. So yeah, there are many things. I could list many things that students do in their applications that I don't like, because maybe they think I don't know how the system works or something. But for instance,
hopefully it's not like that.
Well, one example is it actually doesn't really matter where you've done your master's degree. It's the undergraduate degree from Iran that counts. The undergraduate degree is the one that's hard to get into. So if you've done a master's degree, even if it's from Sharif, but your bachelor's degree is from some lesser university, I don't want to name any names, but then it's not good if you send in your application, you say, I'm from Sharif University, because I'm going to look at this CV and realize, well, you're trying to hide the fact that your bachelor's degree is not from Sharif. So then right away I can, you know, so there's many things like that where people try to embellish or hide their resume, and most professors can see through it. So it's better to be honest, and it's better also when I said, you know, you haven't done a master's in my area. Well, it's also better to apply to professors that work in a field that you are passionate about, because, you know, that's what the professor wants. He wants a student that really wants to work in his area. So so it's not good to what I call blanket apply to hundreds and hundreds of professors, like as if it's a lottery, because it doesn't work that way. You know, I can tell when a student is enthusiastic about my area. I can tell when he's done projects in my area, when he's, you know, really has a passion for a certain specialization. So it'll show in the resume for sure.
So a question that came up to my mind when you were talking about like a different master's degree or a different master's program, I mean, was the fact that, you know, sometimes passion comes up with time. What do you say about the people that have studied different programs from let's say yours, but are really interested and enthusiastic about applying or like having further education in your area of like research and interest? How can they increase their like chances to be accepted?
It depends. If you're from the bachelor's degree, you don't really have a specialization yet. So then it's really based on grades and which school you're from. Because you have a good general education if you're from Amir Kabir or Tehran. So, you know, then if you're applying for a master's degree, then the specialization doesn't really matter. Maybe you've done some side projects or some things that will help your resume. But when you're applying for a PhD, then you've made a decision to do a master's in a certain field. So many professors will look at your master's and, wow, he already has experience in what I want, and then so I want this student. So I think the decision of which field you're going to study for in your master's is very important. And for certain professors, especially me, it becomes hard to change. It becomes hard for me to trust somebody who's done something and now says he's interested in something else.
I totally understand. Yeah,
it's like your teenage children. They change their mind all the time, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
I
totally remember the time that I wanted to study fashion design or law, for example, and then I totally changed it to computer science. So like this hits home, honestly, for me. That's why I asked that question.
I also feel sorry for the students in this way, because if you're 21 years old, maybe you're not supposed to know exactly what you want to do with your life, and the system kind of forces you to make, certain decisions. So I didn't know I wanted to be a professor until I was 28 years old. So I just decided at that point. So yeah. We're asking you to make decisions on your master's degree at age 21, 22, when maybe it's difficult you haven't been exposed to enough of life and science and everything to really make that decision. So I understand how it's a difficult situation.
I couldn't agree more with you, Professor Lesser. So let's talk, let's just have another example here, another question I mean. So another question that was asked was this one: what kind of content or approach in an email would make you disregard it without reading it? Such as the use of a tracking email or something like that. Like, what do you say to this person who asked this?
You mean what would make me just delete right away?
Yeah, exactly.
Dear Professor Lessard, I really want to go to University of Toronto.
Oh God.
Some people are just blanket,
so bad.
All professors, and of course they have a form email and then they forget to change it to McGill, and then I realize, oh man, this person doesn't even pay enough attention to know which university he's applying to. So that's obviously one thing. Just don't apply to 100 places and you won't make this mistake. Another thing I don't like is, oh, dear Professor Lessard, I've wanted to work in composite materials since I was 6 years old. So, some people say something like that, like nobody knows what they want to do when they're 6 years old, and so it sounds kind of silly. So there are things like that really, and if you have an email that is like 3 pages long, then
you don't get the chance to read the whole thing then.
Well, not only do I not get a chance to read it, but you obviously didn't write that 3-page email just for me, right? It's obviously a form letter that you're sending everywhere. So I would rather see a shorter email, and a shorter email that points to just key points in your resume that you think might be attractive to me. And then I'll read the resume if I'm interested. So
I get it then. So you think personalization is a really important part of it, am I right? Because from what you're saying, I think people have to somehow like psychologically also understand the professors to know what they might be interested in, to include those like information, that data and information into that email. Am I right?
Yes, I mean the important things that I might be interested in. Mm-hmm. And I can't speak for all professors, but I'm often interested in, okay, you know, there's many people with good grades that have gone to good schools, but mm-hmm. what have you done? Like, you know, maybe on the side you've designed a musical instrument and you've done projects just out of your own enthusiasm, or mm-hmm. Like I work in recycling. Maybe you know, maybe you head the recycling club at Amir Kabir or something. So mm-hmm. you know, I like to see students that not only have good academics but have another life, you know, because we often look for maybe well-rounded students that can handle a variety of things.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if you understand what I'm saying, but
I totally get where you're coming from. So let's see. Another question asked is, in a resume from students, what catches your attention and prompts you to review it further? Yeah, like I guess they're asking about the key points of one's resume. What do you personally like find interesting in one's resume?
I think I kind of partially answered that just now, but it's a well-rounded resume. So sometimes academics alone are good. Leadership skills are good too, because as you move on to PhD, you're going to probably have to help professors teach classes. You're going to have mm-hmm. to go to conferences. So, you know, we might be looking for someone who has a more well-rounded personality that won't be afraid to stand up in front of an audience and explain the science. Mm-hmm. So how do you get this kind of skills? This is not easy to define, but sometimes these things do show up in the resume, like you know, you're class president or something. You're doing things at the university outside of the academics. Yeah. So
I guess sometimes extracurriculars like matter so much more than what one might think. Am I right?
Yes. If I see somebody that cycled around Iran, let's say, you know, I would definitely say, oh, this guy, you know, this guy does things outside of school. I mean, I don't want everyone to start cycling around Iran and then applying to me, but you know what I mean. I've got certain interests, and I think these things are important. A lot of Iranian students, they hiking up Darban Mountain and hiking in Iran. I've been up Darban Mountain myself. So I notice these things when students have outside interests. They play musical instruments, they go hiking, they have, you know, other interests outside of academia. And these are not essential, but I like seeing them on the resume.
I understand. So just to get to know, I guess, the applicants' like lifestyle a bit more, and like how to get, I mean, getting to know them is also, I guess, a part of the job of accepting or declining these applicants. That's so interesting. I honestly never thought of it this way. I never thought one's like interests and things that one might be enthusiastic about might be so important when it comes to academia. Like I always personally focused on the GPA and like things inside the world of academia. So this is new to me as well. I guess
yes, the GPA is, obviously of paramount importance.
Yeah.
But you have to think, you're going to do a PhD, you're going to spend 4 years, well, 3, 4, or 5 years with this one professor. It's almost like your father. It's almost like if you can't get along with the professor, you're going to be miserable. And there are some students that choose the wrong professor, and they're not very happy, and they switch. They end up switching supervisors, which is not easy to do. So it works the other way around too. You better look at, my resume, my background, and see, oh yes, I think I'd get along with this professor, because there have been cases of students that after 2 or 3 years in a PhD, they have to quit because the professor is terrible and evil. So not all professors are nice, so
absolutely. We're all human beings.
So it's a two-way street. The professor has to get along with the student has to get along with the professor. From my personal experience, I did a master's degree, as I said, at Stanford. I intended to go into one area, which was called guidance and control. I took 2 courses in guidance and control, and I thought it was the most boring topic ever. And then I took a course in composite materials, where I didn't think materials was very exciting, but we ended up making things in the lab in that course. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. The professor had a great personality. And then I asked if I could do a PhD with him, and it kind of changed my whole direction in my life. And I would say 50% is whether you can get along with the professor. That's almost as important as the topic that you're dealing with, that you're going to work on.
Wholesome. That's like a wholesome story. I really like the fact that you shared your experience, your personal experience with us, because I know that people watching would appreciate it. So thank you so much for this part. And let's see. Okay, so this question has been asked a lot. It says, is it possible for students to self-fund their studies at McGill and apply for scholarships later on? What do you think?
Self-funding. Now, we've had a number of students. They haven't been from Iran, but they've been from some what I would call rich oil countries, like Saudi Arabia. And they sometimes come with their own scholarship. And it's very tempting for a professor to accept, because it won't cost the professor any research funds.
Yeah.
But I found it's been very hit and miss. Like, some of these students, I'm not sure how they got their scholarships. It could be from some rich connections or something, and they're not always very good students. So if somebody comes with self-funding, then yeah, I really would have to check the resume very carefully just to make sure. But that being said, I'm going to talk only about McGill University in this case.
Absolutely.
We have 2 different master's programs. One is master's thesis. So this, you're applying to a specific professor. He's supposed to fund you, and you do a thesis project with that professor. So this is the regular one. But we also have master's non-thesis. So in this case, you don't have a supervisor, and it's basically like a course master's. So some people, well, we usually don't fund master's non-thesis, because who would fund, you're not doing a project with anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but master's non-thesis gives you a chance it gives you a year and a half or 2 years while you're doing your master's to take different courses with different professors, get to know them, and maybe even figure out which field you'd really like. And so I often take, the master's non-thesis. They take my class, my 2 classes in composite materials, and it becomes very obvious if they like the field, because they'll do well in my class. And then I might even ask, oh, are you interested in doing a PhD after? So this is another way to recruit PhD students is if they're taking the course masters. And that's exactly what I did at Stanford. Stanford does not have a thesis master's. They only have course masters.
Yeah.
And it cost a lot of money. But,
I know.
I happen to have a Canadian scholarship to do my master's at Stanford, but it allowed me to scout out the professors, and I really picked a good one, which I wouldn't have known from Canada. I only knew from being within the program, taking my courses, and then I said, oh, yes, I'd like to work with, maybe 2 or 3 of these professors, but I picked one in particular.
Mm-hmm. So
we have about, I think, 20 students per year in mechanical engineering in the non-thesis program. And in this fall, I think I have about 12 of them in my composite materials, my intro to composite materials class. Mm-hmm. And so I can tell you that how good this is, because I get students in the first week of class in my composite materials class from different countries. They're not just from Iran. But they say, oh, I want to work with you I'd like to switch to the master's thesis program. I want to work with you. And I say, okay, well, let's have a look at the end of the semester. And then the student doesn't do any work and gets like a C in my class. And I go, well, he wanted to work with me, but he's, either he's not very bright or he just didn't do any work and didn't do well in the class. So
I totally understand that.
I really get, the best students through the master's non-thesis program to work with me afterwards. So either they switch, halfway through from non-thesis to the thesis program, if I'm willing to fund them, or they complete their master's and then they say, well, maybe I'll do a PhD after. And then, so for Iranian students, you would need to be self-funded to do this non-thesis program, because the university will not fund course masters, course-based masters. So something to consider. But from what I understand, the economic situation, there are very few students that can afford this right now. And so I feel very sorry.
So I have also another question. Like, something came up to my mind to ask you, but unfortunately, I guess So talking about the funding process and finding positions, like vacancies at universities and stuff, how much do you think having publications is important? Like, what is the importance of it? Because honestly, among Iranian students, unfortunately, it's not a common thing to think about, publishing an article or doing research during master's degree or during the bachelor's degree. Although this is becoming a more common thing, but how do you describe the importance of having publications and the impact that it has on one's further education?
Well, we don't expect anyone from a bachelor's degree to have a publication. That's quite rare. Even with my own students at McGill, I've had one that helped me with or two students that have helped me with publications. And, they worked in the summer as a bachelor student, and they got their name on a publication, which was very good for them. But bachelors, we don't expect anything. Masters, well, if you're doing a research master's at Iranian University, hopefully you're doing something that might lead to a publication. So it's not required. But then there's different types of publications. So publications that are in Farsi, let's say, local journals, we don't put too much emphasis on that. So we can't verify, we can't do anything with this kind of publication. So listing, or saying that you have a first rate publication and it's in an Iranian local journal. It's just not too believable. So, and you can be sure that most professors know what are the good journals in their own fields. So, you know, you can't try to fool anybody in this way. So I would say not emphasize kind of local journals too much, or you can mention them, but if you have a publication in a real journal, this is very good. But I would say we don't really expect it from a master's student even. It's a bonus if it does happen.
I understand. I asked that question because at the moment let's say the competition is, I guess, it's really competitive to like apply to good universities, and that's why I can see like people, even like bachelor students, trying to get their name on some like publication in a good journal. But I mean, as you said, I guess it's not really expected from a bachelor student to like have any publications. I guess it would be some sort of an extraordinary thing on their resume, which would be, I guess, really good for them. But yeah.
So the you're absolutely right though about the competition. It's gotten quite very competitive, and not only from Iran, but Indian, Chinese students, they're all applying. Although the number of Chinese students staying in Chinese universities has now increased, so there's a bit less competition from the Chinese students, but still, I think there's an increase. There's an increase in the number of, I would say, students that want to get out of Iran right now. Yeah. Probably because of the political situation. So.
Yeah, I totally understand. So, let's see. Another person is asking like about the educational gap. So, what is the best way to, I guess, cover the educational gap? What are the chances that one can somehow increase their chances to apply to get admitted to a good university with having a 4 or 5 year gap, like since the last time they were in an academic environment?
You mean they graduated 4 years ago?
Yeah, as an example.
Well, what have they been doing for the last 4 years? I hope they've been doing something good. So I think it's something that can enhance your resume. So I've taken. So really, I don't look at the age. Well, unless you're my age, then I would wonder why you want to do a master's degree at 63. But some of my students came in at 26, 29 years old. They've been very good students, and you can tell from their resume. You know, like example. PhD student who he graduated from Amir Kabir, but he was working for the what's the name of the Iranian airline?
Are you talking about that? That's the national airline, but we also have like Mahan,
Mahan.
And
Mahan. Yes, with the N. Mahan. He'd worked for Mahan repairing aircraft for 4 or 5 years. So, you know, for an aerospace project, which at the time I was doing aerospace research, this was very good, you know, that he knew about aircraft maintenance, and I had a project on detecting flaws in aircraft. So it was perfect because of his experience matched what I wanted. So, but I mean, if you've been spending the last 5 years cooking pizza, well, then, you know, maybe. Well, that's not true, because I cook my composite materials in the oven, so cooking pizza might be a good experience. But you know what I mean. If you've done something not so important or not so relevant, then it doesn't help.
Yeah. Absolutely. I totally
I don't think it
understand.
would hurt though if you just spent 4 years working, because I know some people need to work to earn some money so that they can. So you know, I'm aware of why people need to work. So.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, at the moment, I can see so many Iranian students being busy studying at their university and also working at the same time. And sometimes that causes their GPA to decrease, unfortunately, a great amount. So how do you say, like, let me see, like, what do you think about, like, this question here is asked by a user saying, is it better for students with lower GPAs to show their actual GPA or omit it from their resumes? What do you think? And what can they do to like improve their resume to have better chances of getting admitted to good universities?
You want to hide your GPA? That's
I don't think
not
it's
a
a good
good
idea.
idea. So we have a minimum GPA requirement, so you have to disclose it to the admissions committee. Mm-hmm. So it's on the scale of 4, it's 3.3, I believe. Mm-hmm. So sometimes people think that's a little bit high, but it's actually very close to the average GPA of incoming students. So it's a minimum. If your GPA is below, your application will not be considered. At least at McGill, it won't be considered at all. Why would we consider a below average student when there are so many above average students? Absolutely. So even if you meet the minimum 3.3 GPA, it still looks average. You're allowed to apply, but if you have a 3.3 from Azad and somebody else has a 3.8 from Sharif, I mean, who are we going to choose, right? We're going to choose the 3.8 from Sharif.
Absolutely.
So you can't hide the GPA, or you have to consider, you know, applying to a less famous university that might have lower admission standards. So.
I totally understand. Yeah, the competition is also screaming here, I guess, because although one might meet, like their resume might meet the requirements, there are like high standards for professors, like, and students to be like working there and like doing research there. So I totally get where you're coming from, and it makes so much sense. But how can one with a low GPA improve their resume, in your opinion? No comment.
You know, I see this all the time from my own undergraduate students. I know it's a good student who has got a lot of hands-on skills, and he would do really great in research, but his GPA is not so good. And then we try to convince the department to accept them anyway, because I know they're going to be a good student. One of my best master's students of all time had a 3.28, and the department didn't want to accept him, and I just really forced them to, because I just knew he would be good.
Yeah.
But if they're from Iran, I can't tell. The only thing I can tell is the student didn't work hard enough to get a good grade, and that's the only thing I can conclude. And you know, I can't, from thousands of miles away, accept what the student might say. It could be a father died during his studies. There might be many reasons why the GPA dropped. But why would I take a chance on that when there is a 3.7 from Amir Kabir, who's worked in my field? And so, you know, I just don't have time to take chances on every student who has an excuse which might be valid, which might not be valid. I don't have time to deal with that.
Yeah.
So if you have a low
I guess if you spent time dealing with that, you wouldn't find the time to like cycle and recycle around the world.
Yeah. So the only thing you can do is, I mean, in Canada, unfortunately, almost all the schools are kind of at the same level. So like University of Toronto and UBC, they're all kind of the same level. We do have a few schools that are easier to get into. For instance, in Montreal, there's Concordia University, which is a very good research program in my area, but it has slightly lower GPA entrance standards. So, you know, you could do a master's at Concordia, gets you into Canada, and then, you know, I'll meet you at the Montreal area conferences and I'll see what you're doing, and then maybe you can, you know, get your PhD at McGill or another university once you're in Canada. So if you have a low GPA, I say this to my own students, a student with a bad GPA, and then he's coming to me for recommendation letters for Harvard, Stanford, MIT, and Imperial College in London. And I say, you're not going to get into these schools. You know, you're a below average student. You have to set your sights to be realistic. So I think a good dose of realism is important for students.
Yeah. So another question that was asked, that we somehow actually talked about this, but I'm going to ask it again because I know this is a popular one among our users. It says, do you think someone applying for a PhD can proceed without any publications?
Yes, I think you can if you've obviously done a research project as a master's. Absolutely. If you're from a good school with a good GPA and you've done a relevant research project, then I wouldn't care so much if you didn't have a publication. So you're going to have to do publications as a PhD student. There's no way around that. But I'd say for the master's, yes, because I understand that the publication is not always whether the student wants to publish or not. His professor in his master's has to want to publish also. Yeah. And I know that some professors don't have time, or they don't want to publish with the master's student. So, you know, I'm not like that. I would want the student to have a better chance at doing a PhD. So all of my master's students have at least one publication before they come out. But I think not all professors care about their students enough to do a publication with them. So I understand that. Again, it goes back to not all professors are nice. So,
Absolutely, and that's sad to say so, but to know that. But I guess this world is like this. So another question was about the importance of statement of purpose. Do you think it can really cover the weaknesses of one's CV or resume, like having a good SOP file? Do you think would do that?
A good what?
A good statement of purpose, like why would they want to study in that university or with that professor? Do you think this cannot cover the weaknesses that one might have on their resume, or do you think that might be the second important thing after like your resume?
I can't say how all professors look at the files that come before us. So, I mean, I look at the school and the GPA and the topic of their master's first, and then if I like what I see, then I'll read his whole letter and read his statement of purpose. So I'll only do that in a secondary stage. So I have to be interested in the student first before I'm going to spend time reading 2 pages of a statement of purpose.
Just another question to ask about the statement of purpose. You know, how do you differentiate a good one from a bad one? Like, you know, so many people nowadays use templates to write their own, like, SOP files and stuff. What do you think about that? And also, I'm curious to know, how do you see things like
artificial intelligence, like ChatGPT, changing the way through admissions and emailing the professors, how do you think it will impact the process?
It's becoming, I think it's becoming more and more difficult to tell when somebody's, before when somebody used a kind of form letter or something they found, and then you could tell that it doesn't sound like this would be his English, so. But I think that GPT is getting so good that it's hard to tell whether the person wrote it well or whether he's using GPT. So I think it's going to get to the point where we might have to just ignore statement of purpose, because we're just not going to know whether he wrote it himself, he or she wrote it himself. So, and so that has already started with me. If I'm interested in a student, I'm going to arrange for a Zoom call or a personal call like this, because I won't trust the statement of purpose or his level of English, which might seem perfect in the letter.
Yeah.
So so it might be better not to try to fool the professor once again.
Absolutely. Honesty, I guess, is the most important thing through the way. What about my other question? Like, how do you differentiate a good SOP from a bad one? What do you think one can do to have a better SOP file?
Well, it should be, I think it should be less than 1 page, first of all. And I don't know, there are ways to write these that I think should be standard. Just a brief introduction. You don't have to put a whole bunch of detail that's in your resume. So just a brief introduction of who you are, and the second paragraph should be why you want to work with this particular professor. And a few highlights of what you've done. So
yeah, that's great. So
like I said before, some people make it too long, and then they start talking about their childhood, and and I just sometimes I laugh, at the letters. So yeah.
But it's interesting because I know some students who have done that, actually got into the same universities, which is interesting. Like a while ago, I saw a video about someone who was talking about, their SOP was about the letter F in parents. And I guess he or she got admitted to Harvard, which was really interesting. So I guess these stories actually encourage people to be more emotional when writing their SOPs. And I totally get your point when you're talking about they start talking about their families and stuff. So yeah, I guess it would be a good time to go through the questions our audience has asked. What do you think?
Audio? You mean like live questions?
Yeah. The questions they ask, and I have access to them, so I can read them for you, and you might like to answer them if you know about them. What do you think?
I'll do whatever you want.
Thank you so much. So let's see. The first question is asked, what do the professor consider most important in the student CVs? What do you think? What do you personally find the most important thing in one's CV?
GPA, which university you're from, and the topic of your master's degree.
I can see that. So let's see. Someone is asking you to know whether you're working on additive manufacturing or not.
Whether I'm working on?
It says additive manufacturing.
Additive manufacturing?
Yeah.
Well, my project is on recycling, and part of the recycling, we're using recycled materials in additive manufacturing. So it's part of my research, but it's another professor who does the additive manufacturing part in Toronto. So I have a colleague who's an expert in that. Mm-hmm. So, but I have like three 3D printers in my lab. So mm-hmm. we do additive manufacturing in the lab for sure. It's not my expertise, but it's part of what I do.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting that people actually ask about additive manufacturing so much, because someone is asking, how do you see the future in this area of like interest in Canada and in the world?
Well, I think everybody thinks it's a growth area. Mm-hmm. So if you do any research in this area, you realize that there's a lot of potential, but a lot of limitations. So I'm trying to put recycled materials into the additive manufacturing materials. So as a way of recycling. And it's not obvious. There's all kinds of problems that occur. And so it's an area of research. And hopefully we'll be able to make pretty large structures with additive manufacturing with recycled materials in the future. So this is one small way to help the planet. And
another question that has been asked is this one. People are curious to know, how does McGill University support international students in terms of academic and personal development, in your opinion?
So your connection is not really good right now. So you said, how does McGill support graduate students? And then I didn't hear.
Students in terms of academic and personal development.
In terms of development, like career development?
No, personal development. Yeah.
I still can't hear that word just before development. Tracking development?
I asked about personal development. Personal. Can you hear me?
Personal development.
Yeah.
I think it's part of the professor's job to help the student not only to get a PhD or to get a master's, but to help him with what he's going to do after. So I'm always trying to help my graduate students to get jobs if they want to stay in Canada or if they're applying for somewhere else in Europe. So I've written so many recommendation letters in my life. It's maybe it takes up 10% of my time, of my year is devoted to writing recommendation letters. So not all professors will have time to do this, or they don't spend the time. But it's like I said, a PhD student becomes like part of my family. So of course I want to help them get a job after. And personal development comes in many ways too. So some professors get the students to do all the work, and the professor goes to the conference and enjoys the conference and presents the work. So that's actually not too beneficial for the student. Sure, they wrote the paper, but I hardly ever present at conferences anymore. I send my PhD student to the conference, and then I sit in the audience and protect him from other evil professors and their bad questions. So, but I think I think that's important for the student's development to be able to go to an international conference and to present. I think it's part of the PhD. So, I think, again, this is why it's important to choose your professor correctly. If you're thinking of, if you got accepted by a professor, I would contact grad students in his group directly and say, what's he like, and find out more about the professor before you commit to the PhD program.
I totally understand. So, I guess as the connection seems to not be really great, it's best to wrap up the session with you talking about your project now that we have new people joining the chat. Can you please explain one more time why you started cycling and recycling to save the planet? Like, what was the first, what was the inspiration, and what motivates you to continue doing so?
I had a sabbatical year, so we have sabbatical years where I can take a year off from McGill University. And initially I was going to go to 3 universities, one in England and in Belgium and in Japan. So I was going to spend 3 or 4 months at each university. And but my research is on recycling and sustainability. So then I thought, well, why don't I cycle to these places and turn it into a low emissions journey around the world? And then the idea kind of grew. It grew from 3 universities to, I ended up going to 28 universities in this past year. I gave presentations at 28 universities, and I cycled to all of these places in 20 different countries. And it also is more believable. I want to work in sustainability, and I'm doing the journey in a sustainable way without taking the train or a car. So I did have to take an airplane to get over the oceans, unfortunately, but I didn't have time to sail over the oceans. But still, it added to the credibility of what I was doing in trying to convince people that they should think more about the planet. So, so this idea just kind of grew, and then I decided to film along the way. So I filmed a lot of stuff, visited a lot of places, and I'm actually going to, starting now, I'm working on a documentary film which will talk about this 1-year journey that I did. So hopefully this will be, in about 1 year from now, will be a documentary film that people can see. So that's the basic journey.
We're just gladly waiting for documentary to be released so that we can also inform our audience to watch that. And thank you so much for telling us that, so we would be we would be waiting for it. I personally would want to watch it, and I'm so excited to know what you've done, what you've achieved through this whole journey. And thank you so much for accepting our invitation, Dr. Lessard, to be here and share your information with us. It matters so much, and we really do care about the fact that you helped us raise awareness among students, Iranian students and international students, I would say, in general. So, do you want to add anything to the session? If yes, the stage is yours.
Well, I have a website called bike62.com, which tells you more about this journey that I've done. An Instagram page. So I think the links can probably be provided by ابرادین. So if you want to see me eating insects in Thailand and all kinds of other things like that, then you can watch some of the interesting Instagram videos and YouTube videos. So yeah, maybe have fun with that. And I hope to come back to this ابرادین network again, maybe in another capacity. To maybe we can do this again sometime when we have another cohort of students that is ready to ask questions.
Absolutely. We would absolutely share your website and your Instagram account on our account, and people can check it out. I'm sure, and I feel so. I mean, I checked your Instagram account before the session, so I know it's going to be interesting for our audience too. So guys, be sure to check their website out. Anything else, Professor Lassos?
Salam Iran.
Salam, Professor Lassos. So thank you so much for this session and for raising your awareness. We really appreciate you, and it was an honor to have you. Hopefully we will have other sessions with you and we can answer more questions. Thank you, Professor, and have a good time.
Okay, great.
Goodbye.
Bye.